is no one like our God. There is no one like our God. For greater things have yet to come, and greater things are still to be done in this city.
Let's just open up with a word of prayer. Father, thank you for the privilege of worship. Just to slow our pace a little bit on this Sunday morning, to lift our voices to you, to hear a story of your protection and provision, to take the elements and remember what Christ has done. We praise you for this privilege, and now as we open your word and we look at a very familiar story to many of us, I pray you'd stretch our hearts, speak to us, and show us what it is that you would have to say to us. We just praise you for this time now in Christ's name. Amen. Well, good morning. I'm Tom Anthony. I'm the executive pastor of our new church, and over the course of the summer, I've been tasked along with the rest of the staff to try and help this transition and merger go smoothly, and then the two lead pastors just left town. I don't know if you guys think that's fair. I really don't think it's fair, but that's just kind of how it's worked out. I wanted to give you a little, just bit of a snapshot of how things are going. I've had friends around the country contact me and say, you are in for a challenge this summer, or they've used the word nightmare. You are in for a nightmare this summer as you try and navigate this. And I just want to tell you guys, it has been the exact opposite of that. Every single meeting that we've had, conversation that we've had, planning session that we've had so far, I have looked around the table and I've left the meeting thinking, okay, Lord, when is it going to get hard? Because so far, it's just been this fun merging of relationships and friendships and people and ideas, and I'm just excited about what God is doing in the midst of it, and I hope you guys will continue to pray, because I think that's why God has really blessed us with such an easy transition so far. So I'm excited about that. Wanted to give you a little bit of a snapshot of what's going on. Also, we're starting a new series, and the new series that we begin this day is called The Art of Neighboring. We looked at this topic back in November, and we talked about doing this topic while Ed was on his sabbatical with no idea that any of this stuff was going to unfold. And we picked this topic and said, let's do this topic at the beginning of the summer. We'll focus on neighboring because it's incredibly important for us to be good neighbors. We had no idea that the Black Forest fires were going to occur. We had no idea that things were going to unfold in the last 2 weeks like they've unfolded, and that we would all be drawn into the importance of being good neighbors. But God knew that, and he was preparing us for it. And so we're in the middle of this series right now, and you're going to have the opportunity to hear me and others speak to this topic, and I hope jump in to really become great neighbors. And then finally, while I'm speaking, and this is a little bit different for me, we've got some art going on over here on the side. So if you get bored of what I'm saying and I look out and 90% of you are looking over there, it's okay. You're not going to hurt my feelings. I'm a big boy. I can handle it. So if you guys want to pay attention to what's going on over there, Joe's going to be painting while the rest of the service is going on. So it's exciting to jump into this. We're looking at this topic, and we're looking at the importance of being neighbors. And first thing I want to say is just that neighboring is an art. It really is an art. It's an art to be a good neighbor. It's not something that just comes naturally for a lot of people. And a lot of times when you look at it, you say, some people do come naturally by this. All of us can grow in this. For some, this is easy. For some, it's hard. But I want to be really clear. It's not a matter of extroverts versus introverts. A lot of times introverts will look at something like this and they'll go, well, that's just easy for you because you'll talk to anybody. My kids joke around that I will talk to anyone, anywhere, at any time. We're standing in line at the grocery store, I start talking to somebody. I'm standing in line somewhere else, and I just start talking to them. It's just very easy for me to do that. My wife is the exact opposite. She's an introvert. But here's what happens when we go to a party, and maybe you can relate to this. We go to a party, there's a bunch of people there. At the end of the night, we kind of report back in. We start talking about, how was the party? And she says, so how was the party? And I go, it was great. I talked to so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so. I don't know if you know this, but I'm just telling about all the different people that I talked to. And she kind of looks at me like, is there anyone that you didn't talk to? And I have to think about it for a second. Yeah, there might have been one or two. That's just normal for me. And I come home from the party and I'm really wired and I want to stay up really late and there's a lot of energy. She doesn't have the same amount of energy when we come home. But I say to her, how was the party? And she does something like this. She goes, it was wonderful. She uses the same phrase. And then she says, I talked to Lisa. That's it. The whole night. One person over in the corner, she talked to Lisa, but she knows everything there is to know and all the update there is on this person named Lisa. Because for her, as an introvert, to talk to one person and to go deep is incredibly important and valuable, and it's what she's great at. So when it comes to the art of neighboring, it's not a matter of extroverts versus introverts. My wife is great at neighboring, but she doesn't meet every single neighbor. We go outside, all the neighbors are out. If we're out there for a half hour, I talk to every single one of them. She talks to one. We come inside, she tells me everything that's going on with that one person. So it's not a matter of extroverts versus introverts. I want to draw another contrast too, because some people just have a gift for this, and so there is a gift, but it's not the gift versus the command. See, we're all commanded to love our neighbors. Jesus was asked, what's the greatest commandment? He said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. There's a command there. Now, I've met people that have a gift in this area, not a matter of extrovert, introvert. When I was going to a seminary, I had a classmate. His name was Mike Zachman. Mike pastors a church up in Washington State now. And he would just walk up to people on the street, start these conversations, and then he would lead them to Christ. And it was amazing that all the different people that he's like, I was talking to this guy, we were at the car wash, and I started talking to him about Jesus, and then he prayed to receive Christ. I mean, every one of his stories ended that way, and at first I thought he was making it up. And then one day we were sitting in class, and they said, so Mike, what happened this week? He goes, well, a strange thing happened. I go, if it's strange to Mike, this is going to be so strange to the rest of us, we're not going to be able to believe it. So he said, I was at the mall, and I walked into the bathroom, and I was standing there at the bathroom, the urinal, and I looked over, and I got this prompting from God that I should talk to the guy next to me. Now, the women in this group may not understand, but we don't talk to each other in the bathroom. Guys don't do that. We don't make eye contact. We go in, we do our business, we wash our hands, hopefully, and we walk out, okay? That's it. Women talk in there. Guys do not do that. So as soon as he starts the story, we're all looking at him like, you didn't, Mike, you didn't. And he's like, so I'm standing there, and I said, so. And I start talking to him while I'm standing at the urinal. Guess what? He prayed to receive Christ. And I'm like, forget it, I'm out of here, That is a gift. Some people have a gift. The rest of us need to respond to a command, right? Jesus tells us, love your neighbor as yourself. He calls us to that. There's a command involved. But here's the great part. God is already at work. So this is what we're really called to do. We're called to join with the artist. We're joining with the artist. That's really what we're doing when we reach out to the people around us. You see, God is at work all around us. He's the artist. And it's a matter of finding out where He's at work, seeing the people He's at work in, and then simply joining Him in that work. So let's take a look at a passage today. It's the story of Zacchaeus. It may be familiar to you. We're going to take a look at Luke 19, verses 1 through 10. And I'm just going to read through this. Luke 19, verses 1 through 10. It says, he entered Jericho and was passing through, and there was a man named Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector and was rich, and he was seeking to see who Jesus was, but on account of the crowd he could not, because he was small of stature. So he ran on ahead and climbed up into a sycamore tree to see him, for he was about to pass that way. And when Jesus came to the place, he looked up and said to him, Zacchaeus, hurry and come down, for I must stay at your house today. So he hurried and came down and received him joyfully. And when they saw it, they all grumbled, he's gone in to be the guest of a man who is a sinner. And Zacchaeus stood and said to the Lord, behold, Lord, the half of my goods I give to the poor, and if I've defrauded anyone of anything, I restore it fourfold. And Jesus said to him, today's salvation has come to this house, since he was also a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost. Today I want to make this simple, okay? That's just kind of the way I think, and so I want to make this simple. I want to give you 3 keys and a warning. There are 3 keys in this passage that you might miss. The story gets so familiar that you just kind of zoom right through it, and you miss these 3 keys, and these keys apply to you, and they apply to me. If we're going to be good neighbors and grow in the art of neighboring, we need to look at key number 1. And that's expect interruptions. Expect interruptions. With our pace of life and how quickly we go from one thing to the next, a lot of times we blow right past an opportunity that God is giving us to join with the artist. And we need to expect that as we're going through life, there will be interruptions and people and things will come along that we need to talk to. You know, if you look at Luke 19, verse 1, it says this: He entered Jericho and was passing through. Jesus had no intention of stopping in Jericho. Jesus was passing through Jericho. And if he was like many of us, he would have thought, how do I get through Jericho with no stops, no delays? How do I get right through there? But he expected an interruption. He was expecting that God might be at work. His Father might be at work, and he might need to join him in that. A couple days ago, I think it was Friday night, my wife and I, we have a mailbox in our neighborhood. We live in Jackson Creek. It's about 6 houses down. She goes, you want to walk to the mailbox with me? I said, sure. We walked to the mailbox. On the way back, our neighbors are outside. And so, expect interruptions, right? I'm preaching on it this Sunday. I better do it. So we stop and we end up talking to our next door neighbors. They had a tree die. We had a tree die. We start talking about going and getting a new tree. How are you going to do it? We decided to go yesterday morning and get them together and do this together, the art of neighboring. When we got home that evening after going to the mailbox, the kids were like, where'd you go? You know, they were afraid we might have gone out for ice cream. I don't know if you guys do that. Hey, we're going to the mailbox, then we hop in the car and leave the kids. You know, it's a good idea, I think. So they were checking, and no, we hadn't gone for ice cream. We'd just gone down the street to the mailbox, but we stopped and talked to our neighbors. The art of neighboring, expecting interruptions. Those things happen. And a good rule of thumb on this is it's almost never when we plan. It's almost never when we plan. We might think, I'm going to do this, or I'm going to be intentional with that. And God just brings it along at the strangest times, in the strangest moments. It's never when we plan. Sometimes Cammie and I talk about, that's my wife, and about inviting neighbors over for dinner. Sometimes it works out where we plan it. But often we just got to be ready to be interrupted. We just have to be ready to look for that opportunity that's right in front of us and join God in that work. That's what we need to do. You know, normally my wife brings water up to me, so that's really good. Like if I cough like 3 times, that's our signal. And I already had water. I should reach for it, right? That's our signal. If I cough 3 times and she doesn't move, then I just look at her and I cough. And then she goes and gets water. You know, we've been married for 22 years. So we expect interruptions. That's key number 1. Here's key number 2. Expect surprises. Expect surprises. Look at how Jesus chose the disciples. It wasn't the greatest candidates, was it? We're surprised by who he chooses. God almost always throws us a curve on this. So look again closely at the passage in verse 3. It says, and he was seeking to see who Jesus was, talking about Zacchaeus, but on account of the crowd he could not, because he was small of stature. Nobody would have picked Zacchaeus as the guy that Jesus was going to stop and talk to. Nobody would have wanted to talk to Zacchaeus. He was a tax collector. He was hated by the people in the town. He was in the back row because he came late and he was too short. He climbed a tree to see over it. But even if he got there early, I don't think Zacchaeus would have gone into the front row. He would have stayed away from the people. There was a surprise there that Jesus was going to reach out to this guy. And oftentimes, we are surprised if we realize where God is at work. Because it's almost never who we plan. It's almost never who we plan. I'm from Indiana, and so automatically I play basketball. I mean, you just have to if you're from that state. About 10 years ago, I was playing basketball at a gym, and a bunch of guys were playing, and I joined in with that group of guys. And as is what I normally do, kind of my normal practice, I said, okay, Lord, is there somebody here that you want me to reach out to? Is there somebody here that you want me to be intentional with, the art of neighboring, kind of be a neighbor to? And right away, he put a name into my head. I mean, I really felt like God said, I want you to reach out to Frank. And I said, is there anyone else? I mean, Frank was this guy that was the worst person to play basketball with on the basketball court. He was a dirty player. He would foul really hard, and then he'd look at you like, how could you call that foul? And then you'd barely touch him, and he'd be like, foul. And I'd be like, seriously? You threw the guy to the ground. I mean, I just didn't like him. I didn't want to be around him. And so I said, 2 out of 3, Lord. I mean, normally he doesn't work that way. And so 2 out of 3 was Frank. And I said, okay, I'll reach out to him. So I looked for an opportunity just to talk to him. One day we were sitting on the sidelines. We had substitutes. We were kind of resting. I started talking to him a little bit, asking him questions. And I said, hey, would you like to go grab lunch sometime? And he said, that'd be great. So we went and grabbed lunch. And I said, so tell me a little bit about yourself. And he started to tell me a little bit about his background. And about 2 minutes into it, he started to talk about how he was in a terrible marriage and was actually going through a horrible divorce. And I thought, that's why he's so angry on the basketball court. Well, Frank and I became friends over the course of the next few months, and I invited him to our home, and I said, you're out on your own now. Why don't you come over and eat? No, I don't want to come over and eat at your house. Come on, you got to eat. My wife's a great cook. You should come over. One night he comes over for dinner. We talked to him there. He started coming over a little bit more regularly. And then we did this thing in our neighborhood on Wednesday nights where we just have soup and play cards. He started coming to that pretty regularly. He'd come and have some soup and play cards. And then one Sunday morning, I was standing out on the sidewalk in front of my church. Car pulls up, and out steps Frank. He said, are you surprised? I said, shocked, actually. I was shocked that he was there. And he started coming to church regularly, ended up giving his life to Christ. About 1.5 years later, I got to do a wedding for he and his new girlfriend, who was this wonderful Christian woman that he'd met. And now he's a dad of 3 kids, and it's just amazing to me to see what happened. When I said, God, who is it? And he said, Frank, and I said, please, somebody else. God knew. God knew. He had somebody else in mind. So expect interruptions, expect surprises. And here's key number 3. Follow the artist. Follow the artist. This is the most important thing you'll hear from me today. God is at work all around us. Only He knows where He's at work. Look at what happens in this passage in verse 5. When Jesus came to the place, He looked up and said to him, Zacchaeus, hurry and come down, for I must stay at your house today. When Jesus stopped and talked to Zacchaeus, there was 100 people around. And the thought that keeps crossing my mind when I read this passage is not just why Zacchaeus, but how did Jesus know that it was supposed to be Zacchaeus? How did He know with 100 people there that He would go, you, that guy, you're the one I'm supposed to eat with today? Now we could say it's because He's the Son of God. He's God. He knew. But that's not it. He was joining with His Father, and He was doing exactly what His Father told Him to do. He was joining with the artist, and we can join with the artist as well. So here's another reminder. It's almost never how we plan. It's almost never how we plan. We plan it one way, God does it a completely different way. I had a friend named Ron who I'd worked with when I worked at General Motors. I took him out to lunch a couple times, and we talked about Christ, and he would look at me, and I would share the message of the gospel with him. I'd say, do you understand? Excuse me. And he would say, yes, I do understand. And my eyes would light up, and he'd go, I need to go to church. And I'd be like, no, that's not it. And then we'd go to lunch, and I'd share the message with him and share the gospel with him, and I'd say, do you understand? He'd go, yeah, I understand. I need to try harder. And I'd go, no, that's not it. Every time he'd get the answer wrong. And then one night, it was about 10:30 at night, my phone rings, and it's Ron. And he calls me, he says, hey, can I drop by your house? I said, sure. I said, we're about ready to go to bed, but you want to come over? Come on over. He walks in, we go back in our family room, and he says, you know all those times you've been sharing this message with me? I think I understand. And I thought, sure you do. I mean, that's really what went through my mind. And he said, I've been in charge of my life all along, and it's time for me to surrender and let God be in charge of my life. And I went, that's exactly right. What happened? So he unfolds this story for me about things that were going on in his life, and God had done this amazing thing and changed his heart and changed his life. The artist is at work. He's the one who wants to do these changes. He's the one who wants to change people's lives. So these are 3 keys, but I also want to give you one warning. Here's the warning. Some people will grumble. Some people will grumble. That's just the way it is. That's the warning. It might be your Christian friends. It might be a leader that wants you to do things differently or live differently. Jesus got all kinds of negative feedback and grumbling. Look what happened to him in verse 7. And when they saw it, the crowd, they all grumbled. He's gone to be the guest of a man who is a sinner. Jesus does exactly what his Father tells him to do, reaches out to the exact person that he's supposed to reach out to, and the crowd grumbles. You know, life change happened. A man was completely transformed. So it's important for us to remember even Jesus faced opposition. He was a man without sin. If he lived today, he would get all kinds of negative emails. That's what would happen with Jesus. He would get negative press. There'd be a picture in the newspaper of Jesus in a bar saying, "Can you believe Jesus is talking to this guy?" I mean, that's the kind of stuff that would happen with Jesus today. He would have gotten grumbling. So it's important for us to remember this. John 5:19 was in our compass this week, and I want to encourage you, pick up a compass every week. It's not the most deep study you're ever going to find. It's just to keep us on the same page, common conversation. This verse was in our compass this week, John 5:19. It says this, "So Jesus said to them, 'Truly, truly, I say to you, the Son can do nothing of his own accord, but only what he sees the Father doing. For whatever the Father does, that the Son does likewise.'" Whatever the Father does, Jesus did. Whatever his Father wanted him to do, Jesus would do. If he was on his way through Jericho and Father wanted him to stop, he would stop. If he saw a man that he knew was rejected by the crowd, and Father said, "Talk to that man," he would talk to that man. He would do exactly what his Father told him to do. And we can live that way as well. That's truly the art of neighboring, is learning to listen for the artist and follow the artist's leading and do what he has called us to do. You know, we have a great vision in our church, and it's that we would see biblical community on every street. It includes all of us. It challenges all of us. We're going through this merger, and I got to be honest, 6 months ago I thought this will never happen. And again, I just watched God do thing after thing after thing after thing in this, where I'm like, okay, the artist is at work. We better join the artist on this. And he's doing this great thing in you and in me and in the people around us, where he's giving us an opportunity to be the hands and feet of Jesus to our neighbors. We simply have to join with what he's already doing and join with the artist. You know, I think God has some incredible things in store for us this summer. I think a lot of times in Colorado it's summer and people go camping and they do this and they do that. That's fine. We're going to do the same thing. We're going camping a couple times this summer. But don't miss gathering together. Don't miss being together on Sunday morning and worshiping. Don't miss joining God in the work that he's doing on your street and in your neighborhood and in your relationships. Because he wants to do a great work this summer, and we might see some dynamic, incredible things. So I want to challenge you. Share the excitement of what God is doing. Be intentional in your everyday life and listen for the leading of the artist. Reach out and join with him in the work that he is already doing. And we're going to see some amazing things happen. Let's bow our heads in prayer and go to the Lord. Father, I don't know about the rest of the folks here, but I know as a kid growing up in church, I would hear a pastor say, if you don't share your faith, then the person around you is going to go to hell and it's going to be on your conscience. And coming to realize just how wrong that statement is. You don't say it's on us, it's on you. You're the one who says, there are people around you that are far from me, and if you want to, you can join me in the work that I'm doing. And just watch what I do, and it'll be incredible. So please open our eyes to see you at work. Give us a heart that would pray for our neighbors and say, okay, where can I join you? And that we would be drawn to that, and that we would see some things happen in our relationships and our neighbors this summer that we've never seen before in our entire lives. Because you're at work and we got to join you. Be glorified in that, God. In Christ's name, amen.